Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sheffield Doc Fest. I'm Cíntia, the festival director, and I invite you to follow the panel that we will have now. It is a panel that is entitled "What Can a Film Festival Be?" And it would happen anyways in the festival, so it's not a panel that was just inspired by the current situation. I think, and we do think in DocFest, that it's important for film festivals to question their relevance, their pertinence, and their role every time, and to come together, the different festival directors and programmers. And so we decided to put this panel here, and right now we are being challenged. The film festivals' roles is being challenged, not just because of the COVID situation, but the whole world is actually calling for change, for deep critical exercise. And so we invited quite amazing programmers and festival directors that I personally admire deeply. And I asked them to join me here. We will have a very fluid conversation. It's not, it won't be for taking massive conclusions. It will be to really share ideas and doubts too. So I ask everyone to join me. And I will introduce, first of all, I will introduce Carmen Gray, who will be co-chairing the panel with me. Carmen is a freelance film journalist, the chief critic for Modern Times Review, the European documentary magazine, and programmer for Switzerland's Winter Tour Short Film Festival. Thank you, Carmen, for accepting co-chairing this panel. Then I would like to introduce Eva Sangiorgi. Eva Sangiorgi is a renowned film programmer, director of Viennale, Vienna International Film Festival, an extremely inspiring event in Vienna, in Austria. And she's the founding director of, she was the founding director of the FICG Film Festival in Mexico City. Violeta Bava. Violeta, she's the program consultant at Venice Film Festival, NZIFF and NYFF, programmer at IFA Macau. She's also the co-head of industry at Vision Réel and head of studies for the Feature Lab program at Torino Film Lab. She's the founder of Ruda Cine, which has produced films by Milagros Mumenthaler, Martin Heitman, Dominga Sotomayor, and Eduardo Williams. Then I introduce Wood Lin, program director of the Taiwan International Documentary Film Festival, one of the major professional platforms for documentaries in Asia. Jean-Pierre Rehm, executive officer at FIDMarseille, the Marseille International Film Festival, recognized as an important European source of new cinema and which holds its 31st edition next month. And I must say it's an extremely inspiring festival. It was, and I learned a lot from this festival in my personal career, I must say this. Dennis Lim, director of programming for film at Lincoln Center at the New York Film Festival, which since 1963 has brought new and important cinematic works from around the world to New York each year. And Rodolfo Castillo-Morales, director of documentary programming at Guadalajara International Film Festival, an annual showcase for Mexican and Ibero-American cinema. Thank you everyone for being with us and welcome. And I would ask Carmen to take from here. Thank you, Carmen.
Hi, so thanks from me as well to everyone. Yeah, so as Cynthia mentioned, I mean, we want to keep it quite open just to hear some of the concerns and thoughts that you were having. So we were talking the other day, I mean, obviously it's a very exceptional moment that we're in right now, with kind of all parts of the chain of the film industry having paused, everyone kind of shut inside. It's been quite a time of reflection as well as anxiety, I think. And then you know, with everyone now coming out onto the streets with these protests, there definitely seems to be a sense that all these kind of rigid structures that were in place before are actually very fragile, and that things can change very easily. So in terms of our industry, and, you know, festivals in general, so maybe we can just start, it's a bit of a big question, but talking about, you know, if we think they will go back to how they were before, or was that even a workable model? And I think if we start with Dennis, because you've been in the epicenter of a lot of this with COVID and also with the social unrest in New York, people are talking about even if New York as a city will be the same, let alone, you know, any of the cultural institutions or festivals. So I understand that you are meant to happen in September. So could you say a little bit about how you envision that happening, and maybe just the landscape in general in New York and wider? Any thoughts that you have about that to start?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to see everybody on this panel. Sure, I can say a little bit first about what we're planning, though I will say that it remains quite uncertain. I think the situation in New York is a little bit behind Europe, I think most of Europe at least, in terms of the reopening and the recovery. But the city is starting finally to reopen. Our festival takes place in late September, early October, and I think we're doing our best to approach it, you know, somewhat creatively this year, as you have done at DocFest, I think, and we are, much as you have, I think, are thinking of introducing as much flexibility as possible into the format of the festival. You know, as I think, you know, you noted, Cynthia, when you reached out to me, this is the situations like this force a certain kind of clarity on the or a little sense of urgency and reflection on what truly matters, right? What is a film festival? And the idea is that a film festival brings films and filmmakers and audiences together. So like if you cannot do that at all in the physical world, what can that mean? And if you can do that in a limited way in the physical world, how do you work with that? I mean, I don't have anything concrete to share about what we're doing other than to say that we are, you know, open to, the goal remains to use physical spaces. The goal remains to use cinemas, because I think that's important. We expect that will be possible by the fall in New York. We're looking at, we're expecting reduced capacity in cinemas. So we are thinking of how to get around that. One way would be to actually extend the duration of the festival by having more screenings. Another way would be to use additional spaces, and also to think about online as a supplement to the cinema. But I think, you know, what you said, Carmen, it's not just the pandemic. I do think that this interrelated situation of the protest is an equally important one, at least in the US. I mean, I think obviously there's a very specific target, which is, you know, anti-Black racism and police brutality. But I think what people it's forcing a conversation about a much larger conversation that is applicable to the film festival world about, you know, access and equality and privilege, and, you know, how a festival might perpetuate or benefit from an elitist structure, an exclusionary structure. And I think that's something that is a meaningful conversation to have right now.
Mm-hmm. And you said it's very important for you to have the festival happening in physical space. In terms of inclusion, I mean, do you think that helps for making it more accessible, or what is your reason for placing that importance on the physical screening?
That just because I think films belong in cinemas. I mean, but you know, I'm also like, I think certain films can work in other settings, but I think for us, you know, I think the act of bringing people together happens in the real world, ideally. But you know, that's what we're working towards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wood, maybe you've got something to say about that. I mean, I know your festival in Taipei, I experience the audience as being very politically engaged, and obviously in your region at the moment, everything that's going on with Hong Kong, and I know that the film scenes in your countries are quite kind of connected or supportive of each other, and your festival has been postponed until later, I understand. Is it important for you, I mean, as a kind of a gathering point, that it is happening in physical space? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. I agree with Dennis that I also think physical experience is very key value for watching cinema. I can say why we decide to postpone our festival for 1 year. I think it was in the middle of March. It was the first wave of coronavirus pandemic in Asia. At that time, we invite a lot of international filmmakers from Europe and US, but the pandemic has already spread in Asia. The filmmakers from Europe and US, they say, wow, they can come, but after like 3 days and 5 days, the pandemic suddenly happens in Europe and US, and very, very fast. Then we decide to stop all the invitation for the international filmmaker, and we hold a meeting with all the staff to discuss what we can do and what should we do because of the coronavirus. And all the staff agree that we should postpone for 1 year because of the festival is not only showing film for the local audience. Mm-hmm. For us, it's also very important that the audience have chance to really exchange their idea with the filmmaker from all the world. So also we have a lot of events like live cinema, documentary theater, and fiction, something like that. And yeah, so that's the very key things that we concerned. And also, I would like to emphasize one thing. Like today, we use Zoom, the software, to hold a meeting together. And actually, this software was banned by the Taiwan government. I mean,
oh really?
We yeah, because of the security issue.
Right.
And that's why I would say now the coronavirus situation in Taiwan is almost recovered. We have only like a 500 infected case and 7 people dies. Yeah, I mean, it's all the things is still under control, and we can wear mask or something. It's because that we have that kind of attitude to China, to like Carmen, you say what happened in Hong Kong. We have very strong sense on that kind of things. So yeah, that's I can share with you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to chime in with the idea of the importance of physical space for screenings? Jean-Pierre, I know you guys are about to have FIDMarseille, and you're going to have physical screenings, right? And as a festival, I mean, you're very a champion of, you know, quite artistically challenging, maybe less commercial films. Can you say a little bit about, yeah, your approach to that? I mean, were you quite resistant to, for example, having any of it online? I understand part of your industry will be happening online.
Hello, Carmen. Thank you, Cíntia, for starting this conversation. I'm very happy
to be with a lot of friends here. And yes, we are in a hectic situation because we worked through the selection process while the confinement was the rule. And so we did the selection with masks. It was pretty funny. And so when we heard that the venues would open on June 22nd, we just thought that it was simply impossible to have cinemas open and us behind computers or TV screens. And anyway, I was every 2 days wondering if I was about to cancel or going online. Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of things about going online, mixing supposedly democratic issues. I must say that the first democracy is for the films and to allow them the real space they deserve, which is a screen. That's one thing, the real size, because people worked on that and they thought of not only what they were doing, but they thought of people to receive this kind of work. So I think that there's respect that is meant for both the work itself, the filming, and for an idea of an audience. And the second thing is that I think what a festival is, where a festival is meaningful, is not only to bring people, of course, that's bring people together, meaning the audiences, filmmakers, but also bringing the films together. I think that programming, at least for us, or at least that's what we try, no? Programming should be or could be a very strong statement. And regardless of the content of the film. I mean, I used to say that festivals are the only places where films are not alone. And I'm not saying again, because they would be surrounded with their parents, so to speak, but with other films that are maybe, they don't seem to be related at first sight, no? But then you create something in which an audience can circulate, and it's like, let's say in an art show, if you bring a black canvas from Malevich and then a white canvas by Rehm, no, it creates a different vision on both of the works. Mm-hmm. And I think programming and also choosing films that are just being done, all this is totally different than a display, the feeling of a display you could have online. Mm-hmm. Because in a physical space, then you have schedules and you have, the programming is not only just bringing them together, but also how, no? Mm-hmm. And I think this is very, very important. And this is, let's say, the first political statement would be this against something that would be a market approach, a supermarket approach, no? And again, here, I'm not talking about the content. I'm talking about the physicality of a sense of programming. And I think that's for me, rule number one. So this is why we then we did a U-turn in a few days, no? Saying, okay, we're gonna do this live. And of course, it's kind of hectic now. It's gonna be festivals with lesser days, with lesser people, of course, because as Woodlin said, some of the guests just won't be able to come. But still, no. I think again, for me, the films are the most important in their true size. Mm-hmm. So when you started, Carmen, saying that festivals should be thinking about themselves. First of all, I think there's just like an S to festivals, no. Not one resemble another, and this should be also something to, I mean, emphasize very strongly. Of course, we can talk together, and that's great, and that's what exactly we're doing. But I think we are different. We have different agendas. We have different goals. We have different audiences. We have different money supports. We have et cetera, et cetera. So I think that shouldn't be forgotten. And then I think we are aiming at different things, all of us, no? And that also should be respected as such, rather than you know, pretending that we have the same mission or the same kind of work. Mm-hmm. And then to relate to what you said also earlier, like to the political situation. Maybe I'm going to say something shocking here, but I don't think cinema or any kind of art is about mirroring. No, it's about fueling things, thinking, feelings, fueling things in a very, very special way that it makes you strange to yourself. No? Mm-hmm. And this is the condition that if you're strange to yourself, this is the only condition where you can start approaching something you don't know. And I think having said that is then complicates a lot the game of the so-called political commitment of filmmakers, films, or film festivals.
Is that not political though, if you are kind of making yourself strange to yourself?
It is deeply political, but again, not in the sense of, again, a so-called synchronicity, a so-called connection with what's going on. I think making a film takes I don't know, a lifetime, takes years, and that's one thing. And then you don't know how things are connected. And for me, I've always strongly tried to stand for films that are making new spaces, not trying to look alike what we already know, mm-hmm. even if it's the good cause. And actually, this is one of maybe the strongest reason why we chose to leave the documentary space, because we thought that documentary, not all of them, but there's a strong issue there, which is the speed, which is the so-called connection, instant connection, or true connection to the world. I don't think that works that way. Mm-hmm. And for film festival, it's the same. And like festival in a Corona situation, you know, then it's a big drama. It's not a drama. No, it's an obstacle for events that had to postpone, cancel, or go online. I mean, I feel for them. You know, I'm really sorry. And we could have been just the same, depending on a few weeks. No, but I think that the programming issue is pretty different. I'm sorry I've spoken long.
Who wants to respond to that? Anybody? Violeta, I mean, with Visions du Réel, so you did have an online festival, and it was pretty well received. Can you say something about it? That experience? Yes. Kind of, you had to do it quite quickly as well.
Yes, hello. I share the feeling of being very glad to be with colleagues and friends here. Hi, everyone. Yes, well, I will talk mostly from the industry side, because Emilie Bouches could tell you more from the general direction of the festival and the program. But it was indeed in short time, 3 weeks, about 3 weeks, that the festival was switched to online. So first of all, yes, to say that it was planned to be, as always, physically in Lyon. And I think it's something that's been said about the physical event and the theaters. And for me, what it's really important is our bodies there, our bodies as political bodies, as our presence. I mean, we have been asked to stay home. First of all, well, in Argentina and many parts of the world, people might not have a home. We see that. Then to wash our hands. This last 2 weeks, there was a neighborhood here without water. So we see a lot of situations that we hear about new normality. What's that? You know, like there are a lot of statements, things said, stay home behind the mask. So what's left? You know, like it's cutting our freedoms as individuals and societies. and resonates differently in different parts of the world, of course. So I think there's no formula for a festival, of course, in general, but there's also no formula to address this. It's been taking the festivals in different moments of the COVID wave, let's say, as it's been moving differently, but also in different moments of the calendar of the festival. So what can you do? So I think that for Back to Neon, I think that was quite amazing to be able to react and offer something not only to the filmmakers that they have gladly accepted, but also to the audience. And probably the situation is different. I'm also working for New Zealand Film Festival, and was first edition of Martin Roberts as director of the festival. He was so sad to have to go online, and now he has to switch for a physical event. It's starting very soon, and so it's quite a mess in each case. And since I work with different festivals, I can see how complex it is, and that we cannot give a response like defending one, flag as the one that is valid, because it really depends on the situation on the city, on the particularity of the event, and we are not one. I don't think so. Like quoting this idea of festivals, we are one. I'm sorry, I do belong also to some festivals that are part of this, and I fully respect the idea, but I think all the opposite. We are all different, and that's why it's really interesting. Otherwise, we are getting now a mask, no identity, behind a Zoom, in a square, and we are one. We are losing our identities as persons, as bodies, as festivals. So let's try to be there, ourselves, with all the mistakes, with all our humanity, which probably is very beautiful by now to see, mistakes and humanity and like programs that we don't understand anymore, but not one. And and then there are many other things about this, the reactions and probably in many cases, knowing that COVID is out there and it's being used differently, like here, very close to us, Bolsonaro, there's a use of that, and there's a use of that in Chile and in Argentina as well. So I don't think our politicians are really caring about us. They don't want to be in trouble themselves with the sanitary collapse. So it's always a political use. So where are we? How do we react? I was quite impressed about the lack of reaction during this process. So when I see people now demonstrating, even COVID is there, I was, kind of saying, finally, we cannot stay here behind a mask. What's the value of life? What are we staying at home for? So as a question, no? Like, well, maybe I also...
film festival. So I mean, Jean-Pierre was saying, this politicization of festivals, it doesn't have to be so, reactionary or direct. I mean, do you agree with that? Or do you think there's a strong activist role in this moment that festivals should play or have a duty to play?
Well, a festival is a political act per se. I don't think, I think maybe now we are more aware because it's in a way there's something that I appreciate about this whole situation is that we cannot take things for granted in general, like our comfort, our life, our festival, going to festivals, knowing what a festival will be when you... So we were challenged to think of that. But I don't think it's more or less political than it was before. I think that stays. It's just that we were all forced to think about our own festivals and about how others are playing and responding. And about your question at the beginning that if we can go back, I think it's impossible. Like we cannot go back unless a festival has a time machine. The word, I mean, like we relate to the word, the films relate to the word, and the word is not the same anymore. And actually, yes, it's of course, we as festivals, we want to see the films in a cinema, but we might take some things out of this situation, like having this Zoom, for instance, with you all, probably was not an idea 1 or 2 years ago, and now we are having it. So there are many things that will probably stay as things that we can, that now we take as this new normal to be discussed again, this idea of normality.
I noticed when I was watching films online in the lockdown, I mean, there is a kind of a like flattening that happens, or everything is in a screen and things become a little undifferentiated and maybe impersonal after a while. I mean, does anyone else want to talk about that? Like, you know, whether we can continue to have a lot of things like industry things happening online? Does it take away some of the personal connection that you get when you're in a festival?
Well, sorry, I just jump in.
Please do.
No, because I agree with Violeta, and thank you for having us all here. Marvelous. I was thinking about this idea of what she was saying of being inside with our identities taking away from us in terms of how we're reliving the world. And we were discussing at some point what would happen and how long will this take to go away, you know? And then we started thinking not of what was happening now, but what will happen later, you know? Because if we didn't think about the next steps, then we will just be absorbed by this whole situation in which the world stopped. And I think the nicest thing about it is that it made us think about how we were doing things, you know? I mean, although we didn't want to stop, we had to, and that actually changed a lot of the way we are approaching what we are doing. Not just as festivals, which, as Violeta was saying, also we are a political statement in a way, you know, with the things we program and the things we're showing people and stuff, and also the ways we're relating to the industry and the marketplaces and stuff. But I think it's important to rethink cinema, you know, because what this pandemic has showed us is that we're living in a world full of content, you know. It's not that we didn't have the content before the pandemic. I mean, I'm thinking of online content. Mm-hmm. It's just the way we're relating to it, you know, because we had the chance to choose. We had the chance to choose either to go to the cinema or going to the theater or going to a football match or whatever we could do. The pandemic showed us that we've been living in this two-phase world, so to speak, you know. But when the real world stops, the only thing that relates ourselves to the world is the digital world. And then it brings more thoughts in terms of how we are going to go back to the so-called new normality, whatever it is that is going to be called, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's important to rethink, but it's more important to understand that even though we've changed, how have we changed? For me, that's the main question, you know? what this really has brought us, what has brought to the table to discuss in terms of what are we really going to change, you know? Because if we look like, and then if I go to the industry part, if we go to the way our contents are being spread and shared, it's very different in Taipei than it's in Vienna or Argentina, Mexico, or, you know, the markets, and I hate the word market, but the markets work in a very different way. So, which is really nice is to start understanding that even though we're different, you know, we all have something that could eventually help the other, you know, and the way we rethink the industry as such, that way it's going to make at least our work, it's going to make it, I hope, better in a way, you know. I hope it's going to help us bring contents to people in a much better way, in a much open way, you know, because we weren't, I mean, all the thing that was showing this pandemic is that we weren't actually sharing that much with the world, you know, because we don't, I mean, I don't recall having any films from Taiwan in the last year at the Cinematheque where we work, you know, or I can't remember having any Nicaraguan or a film from Honduras in New York, you know. So that's also a thing that we have to rethink. That how we are really going to go out from this, not just in the physical way, and not just in whether we use Zoom for some things or another. It's also how we're relating to each other all together. Because we have made little groups where we work in, and then we weren't really open, you know. And just to finish, just to say that for us it's really important to have a film festival that it's open and that we will have people, because films are not completed without people. And we will try to do our best always for the films in terms of their relationship with the people, with the audiences. So that's an idea.
So the idea that there's a kind of an illusion of a center that's creating a hierarchy, and then other supposedly like marginal countries are moving around that. So that has to change in terms of how people collaborate. That's an interesting point.
May I just jump in? Because I think it's an interesting point that is being made here is a question of accessibility and how the role of film festivals to make films accessible, and what are the rules for that. And also one thing that came out of this was the fact that by putting away the social side of a film festival, suddenly even the economical and political role of film festivals became much more evident, right? A certain geopolitics and geopower of film festivals. And we have Eva here, who has a very particular film festival. She runs a film festival that is not competitive and does not have premiere rules. That is a film festival that has a very specific history and is an audience success. So it's a festival that is not, it's not closed for cinephiles. It really is a popular film festival. And I would just propose Eva to jump in, because I think this geopolitical and economical issue that suddenly became so obvious. I mean, Cannes is labeling films, and we got questions about, we need the laurel, we need to say we are in the official selection, because this is important for our career, for the film's career. And so we felt that so many films were lost in the middle of this. So Eva, can you say a little bit about that specificity of Viennale? Because I think it's important that everyone understands, and also how you see this from that point of view.
Super. Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. It's a pleasure, and it's also a way of going on and on in these extremely particular situations. For me, I mean, as Cíntia mentioned, the condition is different and specific. So I had a clear idea how to follow up since the beginning, because the Viennale, it's a festival that is focused on audience. There's no competition, there are no world premieres, and there's a general selection of contemporary films plus historical programs made for the city. So it's the Vienna City Film Festival. And it lasts for this reason 2 weeks to give the possibility to the audience to watch as many films they can, only through 2 repetitions per film. And so it's a very huge selection. So for an event like this, is that I inherited and I maintain in his, I don't know, idiosyncrasy, there's no doubt that the festival exists only when it happens in theaters. That means that the festival itself stands for this kind of experience. It's not just a selection of, it's a selection with the event, I mean, connected. And of course, I'm under the perspective of a film programmer or a film director, the film is political not only when it happens in the social arena, but also because the catalog exists and you selected the films and are connected in a way, even if wider in the ways that Jean-Pierre pointed out. That is very important. That makes festival very different of this sharing, general sharing, and connecting all the content and making it available for everybody. This, I mean, it's a political responsibility of a cultural event. But for Vienna, if these 2 parts don't get together, the festival doesn't make sense, because there's also economical aspect that makes also that political, that is how it's financed, and is financed mostly also by a subvention that belongs to the city of Vienna, because Vienna wants to have a city full of activities where the people get together. So it's very interesting, because the pandemic eliminated every possibility of contact, as Violeta was saying, and also limited our freedom for the sake of health. For somebody who decided, it is also a little bit forced, if we think that under a philosophical point of view. And so they make you feel, I mean, think about what's the future of what you're doing, if you will be able to do it again the same way. And I understand that there are events that they cannot just jump or face the situation, finding another medium to happen, because also this is a political statement and a political step. But in my case, I could declare since the beginning that we would have wait until we could be able to meet again. But just because the Viennale is like this, no, it's a festival for the audience. That doesn't mean that, I mean, since the beginning, I understood perfectly the importance of things going on and not be stopped. And so I'm so thankful to the colleagues and the different festivals with different aim and different personalities, that they could reorganize and make things going on, and also allow the people to get together and have a talk and maintain a discourse that is a festival, no? Talk about, or talk around, or talk before, talk after the films. And that is the industry thing, but also just the introduction of what we are watching and linking things together. That is also what you're doing, Cíntia, at Sheffield, no? So everything is still the thematic, the topical programs are there, and there's a desire of thinking and talking around the films, not just making them available. And so I respect very much that point, but for my case, in my case, I mean, I had to stand for that. I'm quite lucky because there's still time. And in Vienna, the situation is quite, optimistic. I would say we reopen the theaters on the 19th of June, next week. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, everything has made me think that will happen. Of course, I'm reorganizing the festival that will be extremely different in a term of logistic and trying to answer the rules and regulation and find solution in order to make it available for the same or for a large number of people, maybe in different settings. But yes, I mean, I think that this is the starting point in my case. But as every festival is a political act, a political event with its economy, its aim and importance, but it's also an organism with many things working inside as people, and also the history of the biological history itself is also important to understand that this organism has to survive. And so I really appreciate every kind of intent that makes that possible. In my case, I would postpone. Other festivals can just be a mixed formula or jump online because the organism needs to survive. And so the people who are working for it and the continuity of the project and so on. No?
Mm-hmm. In lockdown, I mean, I was thinking about this kind of obsession with the new and with, you know, premiere status, how there's a definite, you know, cycle that a film will usually go through, and that's been completely disrupted at the moment. Does anyone else want to jump in and talk about, is there too much emphasis on premiere status and also, you know, showing like very fresh, the latest films? I realized in lockdown too, just how many images we already have, how many old films they are, how often we do not revisit them. Does anyone want to talk a little bit more about that, that Eva has brought up?
Well, I would jump in.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because I think it was the second week of lockdown in Mexico. I was making this exercise of getting to know how many platforms I've been renting
Mm-hmm.
for, you know. So eventually I had like Netflix, Prime, HBO, Hulu, and I counted 11 platforms altogether, which means that I can access endless amounts of content. The thing now is to choose, and I think one of the interesting things about curating or programming is that there is this responsibility of trying to put together a program. As Jean-Pierre was saying, it's important because you're bringing films together into one way of saying something, you know, which is going back to the political statement, and that's very important. That's why festivals thrive, you know, because sometimes we just put things together, which in a wider way would just be lost, you know, because you just don't have a direction where to point the audiences to go. Just it's just too open. But at the same time, I was thinking of how many times did I go to the cinema, just randomly going to the cinema before the pandemic. And it was shocking because as an audience, I only went, I think, twice last year. Because I spent, well, of course, you spend so much time in cinemas while you're going on. But then if you start translating that to the audiences, you know, it seems that we sometimes see cinema and we see premieres as this thing that is going to make your film festival stand out. I don't think audiences, like the real audiences, would actually care that much about it. Mm. I think it's just a direction in which we as festivals point them to go, you know, because I don't think it always matters when you open your film festival with the latest film from the, you know, hottest new filmmaker. But when you open a festival, people won't matter, you know, if they would go, they would go. It doesn't really matter the film. What matters is how we curate things so people can relate to what this kind of any festival is saying. And for me it's more important what Jean-Pierre was saying. It's how we put together the films so they are not alone, you know. And also, I think it's very important because film festivals, in a way, in certain regions, it's the only chance for people to watch certain films as well, you know? And that's what I was thinking about, what I was saying before, is that it looks like we're linked, but we're actually kind of, you know, apart, you know? And that's something that worries me quite a lot all the time. Because films, I mean, I know certain films would be difficult for certain audiences, in the way that we know our audiences, we make studies and stuff. But at the same time, how can we really say, you know, how can we be really sure that someone in Mexico would not appreciate a Thai film, or you know, I don't know. It's still a big discussion in that way. But what I ultimately want to say is that I think if we don't understand that what we're doing is just trying to bring some contents to some people in a way that they do make sense, then we're just losing what we are doing, you know? Because what I think is, it's very important that we try to work with a wider option, not just audiences oriented, but also filmmaking oriented, in terms of that not everyone has access to the catalog of festivals, or not everyone has access to these loads of platforms, especially in countries like Mexico, where less than 50% of the population have internet access, you know, which makes the pandemic really difficult. If we think of, we want to watch films. Just imagine what happens, you know, when you're inside and you have to bring your DVD player instead of your, you know, your platform. So I think it's important that we understand that films have to reach their audience, but we have to rethink, as I was saying before, the way in which we are doing it.
But the question of premieres brings, I'm sorry to insist, but brings again the role, the political and economical role of film festivals. Because I direct a UK film festival, and UK is still in lockdown, and it also relates to the political discourse and transparency and how each government managed these pandemics, which is something else that is also affecting film festivals. But I, for example, come from Portugal, and in both countries, you have filmmakers really struggling to eat. In Portugal, we had to build networks of aids for families to eat because there was no support. People just lost everything. And so the number of films, not the number of films, the plurality of films that we will have will be affected by this. And premieres is also a way of respecting plurality by giving the chance to bring more films into the conversation. And I would like to hear other participants on this, because one of the things that will for sure happen is that we have the danger of having the richest and the most supported ones continuing their careers, but a lot of filmmakers just not being able to. And this is a responsibility also for us in a way, right? How can we, which kind of networks do film festivals need to work for in order to keep being able to listen and to receive and to look at the films that are not in the spotlight?
Who wants to comment on that?
I would like to comment.
Okay.
Well, I think that there's a new scene, and we cannot apply the, let's say, old rules to this situation. And that we are also learning and adjusting. I don't think there's a formula again here. And if Venice has a physical event and then has a present industry online worldwide, might be an option. I don't know. I'm not saying that that will be the case, but might be an option. And everybody around the world, all the professionals would have access. And the geo blog or the IP is something also for anyone that it can connect to easily to technology, can crack it and access. So I think that festivals also reach their audience, the physical audience in the cinemas, but also the audience online. And I don't think really that a film that was shown in Vision du Réel, everybody knows in Argentina, I can tell you. No, and if it's programmed here, it will have a lot of audience again. So I think it's an open discussion about, do we let the filmmakers and producers decide about this, because they might not go to many festivals, and the exposition in one festival might be the chance to have a lot of opportunities. Do we decide for them? Why? Do we need to be all equal and decide on this all together? I'm not so sure. It's a very good question. Maybe we need to agree on certain things because we all are helping each other. Very fine, but I'm not so sure. As a festival organization, I want to decide and take the decision for the producer and filmmaker, that they might decide to, after that festival, release commercially or go to a platform where it's available everywhere anyhow. So I don't think there's a one strict rule, just to start with.
And in Visions du Réel, if I'm correct, you limited the number of screenings, right? So it was more like replicating what would happen in the cinema, so everybody couldn't see it online. It was kind of set to a limited number, right, to increase its chances of going elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. This is very important. The number was like one big cinema, one of those old big cinemas in Argentina or in many places. So it's still a very limited number. And I think that it has to do with each festival decides differently. Ann Arbor did like online one screening at this time. So we all go together online and watch this film, and might be worldwide, but it's just one screening. So it's very limited. And then you have different options. But yeah, at Vision du Réel was like that. And also in a platform connected to the festival. I think it's different if you go to a platform that is not really as part of the festival, and viewers from that platform can access, and they don't even know what they are watching. They might not be festival goers, let's say, and they might watch 5 minutes and say, it's this, no. And then that's one screening of the film. So how do we care about our films when we go online? That's another very interesting question. It's not only the number of screenings or the format, but also what kind of platform. Where is that? Where are we offering? It's like, again, we care a lot about the theater, the quality, the introduction, if it's outdoor, indoor. Well, when we go online, I think it's in a parallel world. There are a lot of things to care about again. Mm-hmm. So yeah, well, I think I've seen all the options, and I don't think now we can have one rule that applies to all the festivals.
I think I'll just jump in I think one point that has come up over and over again is that, and maybe one reason it's hard to actually find answers to any of these questions is because I think we've all said in one way or another that we're all different, and that, every festival has a different, as to use Eva's term, it's a different organism. It serves different constituencies, and for us, we have no competition as well. We have no market really attached to it, other than a very local New York City New York City based industry is the extent of our market. We don't have a formalized market. We don't have premiere policies other than New York City. You know, we show films that have shown elsewhere in North America and the US. But I think what has been interesting for me in this moment is precisely, you know, what Violeta was saying, the ability to kind of think about what's right for each film, actually, which, you know, is simply because the format is just a little different this year for us. I mean, we're thinking about a combination of, you know, in cinema, possibly online. We're looking at expanding, and this is what I meant when I was talking earlier about accessibility, is expanding beyond our usual home to actually, like, you know, to work with other venues in New York City, to think about outdoor screenings, to think about ways in which we typically do not present films, which are necessitated this year, but like to also look at those things as opportunities. And they're not going to work for all films. I don't think every film, you know, is going to work in every of those scenarios, but to maybe just be a little bit more. You never do this, I think. Usually, you know, you have your 3 or 4 cinemas and you put the films in them based on what's available. But this year, I think there is an opportunity for us, as we're experimenting with, you know, multiple formats, to just think about that. And, you know, for me, I also agree with what everybody's saying about the politics of programming, the politics of a festival. And I agree with Jean-Pierre's point. It's not about showing political work. But this question of accessibility, I think this maybe applies more to my context, to the local context, where I feel like film festivals do not do enough, I think, maybe to meet an audience. They depend on an existing audience, and they don't do enough work to cultivate a bigger audience, a more diverse audience. And I think this is an opportunity for a festival like ours to do that work.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else like to comment on that? Eva?
Sure. You know, it's a very tricky, as has been pointed out, a very tricky point is the thing, going back to the topic of the geo-block and the premiere, and because it's mixed up a little bit, kind of interest for the festivals and the interest for the films themselves. So I can only give my positions that probably is still in progress, because I try to understand that I don't have the solution, but an idea from my point of view. In the case of Viennale, for example, this opening up and the availability of everything online created, I mean, a point of crisis that probably more ideological again, because I'm thinking still from the point of view of festival director, not just try to saving the little garden, but it created to me a confusion. So my position is a little different from the one from Violeta, that everything is available, and it's hard for me to understand that, even if maybe it's true that the audience in Vienna will not be the normal audience, not talking about professional, will be really pushed and engaged in going online and watching the films that are happening in Switzerland, that should have happened in an event, a physical event in Switzerland, that is not happening anymore. Create a confusion, because even if it doesn't happen, the film is available for a decision that should be left to the producer and directors, but is opportunities that the festival gives. Everything is okay with that, but me as a festival in Vienna, I take the decision of asking not to be available for my theoretical audience here, because that festival would have happened in that physical space that now is virtual, but can be still physical because it's symbolically physical. And opening up everything and mixing and making everything available create something that has to be discussed, that is this relationship of powers in between festivals. And we are not talking about Cannes versus Venice, but our, realm that is still a political realm. And so this is important that we really think about. It's not a matter of that then nothing changed and it's good to give access to as many people we can, because I feel the politics of festival is mixed up in this decision. I don't know if I explain myself. This is what I wanted to discuss since the beginning when this possibility started, of leaving everything open without the geo blocks, because I mean, I need to rethink my responsibility and my power as festival in a physical, a symbolic physical space. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it gets very theoretical, but yeah. And I don't know, and then maybe it will be interesting also to discuss how we read what's going on, that Cíntia mentioned, no? The Cannes Film Festival put some labels on films. This, on one side, I think this is also good. It's not only bad, but of course, it's a political discourse. In a way, not just get free films to go and to start traveling around when it will be possible. So again, from my point of view, I can pick up these titles. I can, as I am a festival that is not offering world premiere, in this case, I see films that I can program that before were just not available. We didn't know. And on the other side, I mean, I feel recognize other kind of interest from the point of view who's labeling the films themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't know if somebody wants to talk about.
Jean-Pierre?
Anyone else?
Do you have a comment on this? Wood?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think premiere thing sometimes is very tricky things. It's because it depends on what you think. Sometimes festival needs premiere, but films also need to premiere in some festival. But I think the starting point of the premiere is that means your festival has some potential or ability to fight very good films that the other one cannot find. Yeah. So it's not about, but now the situation has become the premiere is the most important things for the festival. Even this film is not good enough. That's why I say this thing is quite tricky. And in my case, my festival has decided to postpone for 1 year, but we only require for Taiwan premiere. And we announced like official selection in March, then we start in April. But all the title has already spread on the websites, and the other festival in Taiwan or in Asia, they can search this title in our website and also ask for the screener from the filmmaker. And there's another festival would take place in September. It's about the human rights. It's a very small local film festival in Taiwan. They really want to show one film from our competitions, and they asked us, could we show the film before your festival? We say, yeah, why not? We select this film is not because of the premiere things. We select it because we hope that we can really help these films to release in Taiwan and has more opportunity to be watched by the audience. We are very happy that you can also select it, and of course you can show it before us. We are happy to see that. So that's my thinking too.
Mm-hmm. So not this like kind of, I don't know, some festivals seem to be very, keeping the films very close to themselves. Any other comments on that? We're actually kind of a little bit over time, but if you have anything else that you'd like to add or discuss that we haven't touched on yet, please bring it up now. Anybody? Cíntia, anything you wanna add?
No, I would just like to say that we all these questions were questions that we at DocFest, we thought a lot about them. We definitely think that, well, we definitely disagree with the idea that online is taking a kind of democratic step. We definitely think that the online is the perfect space for the creation of monopolies of aesthetic, cultural, and language and discursive monopolies, because it's about money and it's about power. And so I have a huge problem in thinking that I could be directing a film festival from the UK who would be programming people's access to films in all over the planet, because I think there are people in each place that are programming and are doing their jobs. And I think it's important to respect a certain ecology of knowledges and sensitivities that allows for dialogue more. And I also think that especially, I mean, especially, to be honest, especially Northern, Western, European, Northern American festivals, we really need to be careful about, you know, the kind of replication of homogenic discourses and perspectives of the cinema, because there are multiple film traditions, there are multiple film cultures, and that has to be nourished. So this said, we also went, a part of our program also went online, because at the same time we do acknowledge the need to bring films to visibility and to defend films. And we knew, I mean, we don't even know, we will do physical screenings in the fall, but we can't even be sure that they will happen because we don't know what will happen. And so we felt that there was a need to still be doing our job, right? We definitely did not want to cancel the festival because we thought that then we would be giving up. And we just accepted this challenge, you know, of trying to think what was the best way. We are not sure this is the good way. Again, I think we need to speak more between each other. And I definitely think that we need to think that each film is a different film. There are films that maybe can live in different environments. There are films that I would never watch certain films outside of a cinema venue. So how can I propose my audience to do that? Right? So it depends, and I think it's a serious question for a film program. And if you are a serious film programmer, you will take that seriously. Yeah, so just to say that I think a lot of things, not just because of the pandemics, but I'm very excited about the kind of conversations that this situation brought. You know, it kind of showed the bone of power relations between film festivals, and power and economical relations between film festivals and productions and filmmakers, etc. And I'm very excited to continue this conversation, because I don't think it's a conversation to be taken during COVID. It's a conversation, it's like a triggering conversation for the future. So yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think it's the beginning again of a conversation, but I hope we can continue it. And I do admire the efforts that each festival that was represented here is doing to think what is the best way to deal with this, and taking it seriously as a challenge. So thank you.
Thank you from me as well. It was great to talk to you all, especially some of you. It's very early in the morning, I know, so even extra thanks for getting up. Yeah, thank you very much, and looking forward to being at your festivals again in physical space or otherwise.
Thank you.